Welcome back to the Home Means Podcast. As we wrap up 2025, I've been thinking a lot about how lucky I am to be on this journey with all of you. This year, we sat down with some of Nevada's most inspiring leaders, people who have shaped our community, told our stories, and reminded us why the state is unlike anywhere else. This podcast started as a simple idea to celebrate the people who make Nevada home. And thanks to our guests and to all of you listening, it has grown into something truly meaningful. So today, we're looking back on some of my favorite moments of the year, the conversations that made us laugh, made us think, and made us proud to call Nevada home. Here are some of the best clips of 2025. So you're always on stage because we love to just how much you advocate for us. You're traveling, I know fun economy is definitely your thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that has really shaped, who we are to the external world?
Yeah, so I did a TED Talk on the fun economy. And basically, here's the quick definition. It really is just growing up in Las Vegas and thinking about the things we think about. So I was thinking about tourism, sports, and entertainment, and now how those three are massively intertwining. And it really felt to me like what this is a fun economy. And when we talk about those three easily definable sectors, that's now, we believe, 14% of all of the money spent on all of the earth. In other words, 14% of all the world's GDP is tourism plus sports plus entertainment. Tourism alone is now at 10%. $1 in $10 pesos yen spent on planet Earth is spent by a traveler. And those numbers are only going up because last year China added 35 million people to the middle class who came up from poverty, where you couldn't travel, couldn't go to, a Taylor Swift concert. I don't know if you know anything about this phenomenon that is Taylor Swift.
I mean, the Queen.
Couldn't go to a ball game, right? Then you join the middle class, and that's one of the first things you start to buy. And 35 million people in China moved up into that middle class last year. 30 million people in India, another 10 million in Indonesia and Vietnam, but also in Kenya, also in Mexico. You're seeing the growth of a global middle class. And the first thing you start to buy are things that Las Vegas sells. Tourism, sports, entertainment, and the intertwining of those three in new ways, like the Golden Knights introduced, as we were talking about earlier. So I think that bodes well for the future of Las Vegas, but also Las Vegas as, in the same way that Detroit was sort of the hub of the automobile economy, we're the hub of the fun economy, and we're exporting it increasingly to economies around the world that recognize the potency of this particular moment. This is the first time in human history where 50% of us are middle class or above, according to the Brookings Institute. And that number's only going up, which means potentially, much as we get caught up in the day-to-day crises that are very real to all of us, the macro picture is actually quite positive for Las Vegas in the long term.
Well, and bringing that back to economic development, this is where we understand that 25% of our employment will always come from this fun economy.
Right.
But how do we diversify by bringing the tech side to it? The, expanding our healthcare and, sports medicine. It's very close to elderly care.
That's right.
And we do have an aging population. And so this is kind of one of those things where we can two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
We're solving for this sector that we're growing, but also solving just gaps that we have in our ecosystem. So it's funny how that's been.
Yeah, we're sitting here in a research park, right, and inspired by places like Research Triangle Park in the Carolinas that transformed the Carolinas thanks to the prowess of those universities there. And when we think about doing research in places, if you're fascinated by humanity, you have to be fascinated by Las Vegas. Because in 30 minutes, you can meet people from 50 countries, you can meet people from 50 states, and you can have conversations with folks by virtue of our tourism economy from all over the world. So if you're fascinated by human behavior, and what business isn't, what a great place to do R&D, right? That's the pitch we've been trying to send out there to the world here at the Tech Park, which is now a robust and flourishing research and technology park. But it's also true of Las Vegas more generally, right? Yeah. We are a smart place where you can get smarter by doing R&D in a way that maybe you can only do here.
And so I get really excited with your vision. And you want to tell a little bit about, what you guys are building?
Yeah, so I see some of the same things in our community. A lot of the education system that we have built, or the learning infrastructure that we have in Nevada, isn't so dissimilar from learning infrastructure nationally or globally, and a lot of it is outdated. You look at the best performing systems, the Massachusetts again of the world, or you go to the Estonias or the Finlands that people hold up as these gleaming examples of what's possible. And here's a secret, they all think that they're bad and they're trying to improve and modernize their learning. Because the reality is everybody needs to. The world is rapidly changing. And I think the world has been rapidly changing for a long time. The way we learn should have fundamentally changed when the internet came out. All of a sudden you have democratized access to knowledge. The formal education system used to be about imparting knowledge to young people. You had experts who had studied their field, who had access to specific forms of knowledge and giving it to young people. Now you can watch YouTube and learn some of those things.
I love YouTube University.
Everything's on YouTube. To ask a young person, they'll tell you that. Everything's on YouTube and TikTok, sometimes for the worst, but yes, it's all there.
It is all there.
And now, like, the best thing about AI is that it's really hit everybody in the face and shown us that we need to change pretty rapidly, because AI is doing things that we thought were uniquely human, creating art, writing essays for us, right? Things that we could spend hours and hours and hours figuring out how to do in a school. And now what is the case study? What is the use case of a school in a world of AI? So I think everybody is tackling this question. How do we modernize learning? And we were tackling it at my previous work. I was at this nonprofit that I care so much about, Teach for America Nevada, focused on making sure that we get leaders into classrooms and working on all of the problems that we're talking about. And I realized that we need to more radically shift the way that we approach learning. We have to take it into the 21st century and help young people live into the 22nd century, because they're going to outlive me for sure. And they need radically different approaches to learning. And so that's how the Center of the Future of Learning was born, from this need. And what we're hoping to do is make sure that Nevada doesn't just follow all the trends. We're always playing catch up in the education world. What is this state doing? What are they doing in California? What are they doing in Utah? Like, what can we do and learn from? Which is good. You should learn from the experts.
Yeah.
Don't reinvent the wheel. And how can we adopt the spirit of anything is possible? We built the largest casinos, the largest hotels in the world. We built this amazing city out of really little. How can we do the same thing in the education space and be a leader in that, where when people chat GPT, young kids aren't Googling anymore. Some of them are. They're not really Googling anymore. When they chat GPT Las Vegas education, I wanted to respond to all the excellence that's already happening and show that we can actually prove what's possible in learning.
You're now the mayor of Las Vegas. And I'm curious where you think Vegas, the city of Las Vegas, is going over the next decade, and what changes you're hoping to be a foundational member of.
Absolutely. And let me say this. When my family first moved to town in 1964, there were 80,000 people in the entire Las Vegas Valley. There are now 2.6 million people in the same geographic area. And, you know, we're projected to go to 3 million in the not so distant future. I think the next decade is going to be explosive and transformational in the city of Las Vegas. And I suspect all of Southern Nevada. Our population will continue to grow. Now, some people don't like that, but it is inevitable. Even though we're having a little economic downturn now, the fact of the matter is we will continue to grow and prosper. We are dealing with a lot of growth-related issues, and I would rather be dealing with our prior success and catching up with that success than worrying that I'm losing population and losing my tax base. And I met with a group of mayors last week, actually, in New York. The Bloomberg Foundation has this program where they invited 47 mayors from around the globe to convene in New York for 3 days to discuss issues and where we're going and how we're getting there. And there were mayors that their communities are shrinking, their tax base is shrinking, they're having trouble finding funds for public safety and fire and roads. That's not our problem. We have problems and challenges, but they are all growth related. So we're catching up with our growth. So that means better transportation. And I know everybody complains about every road. I only wish I had invested in orange cones. I would be a fabulously wealthy woman right now, but I didn't.
You mean our state flower?
Our state flower, yes. perfect. And it is. I'm driving. When people complain to me, I go, "How do you think I go to work by helicopter? I'm stuck in the same traffic
That's
jams
right.
that everybody else is, and it is very annoying. But when it's finished, it's going to be great, and we need it because we're moving out. City of Las Vegas is now really hitting its boundaries, and we're petitioning the BLM to get more land so we can continue to grow. Those are issues that just are transportation, healthcare. Our healthcare system isn't big enough to service the number of people that we have here. And that's something that the schools are working on. Roseman just got accredited, so they're going to be admitting, I think I spoke with them the other day, 64 future doctors are in their incoming class. Toro's at 180. UNLV is at 60, wanting to go to 120. UNR is around 60. We don't have a medical student shortage in the state of Nevada. We have a physician shortage. So if we could get more residency programs and other things that keep graduates of medical schools from leaving town,
right.
then we're going to be able to take care of our own challenge. And so that's a biggie, but it's a biggie. We've got to take care of that for quality of life issues. Also, and the number one is education. We can't keep funding our education system 49th in the United States and expecting a different outcome. And we have a very diverse student population, and it is a lot more challenging to teach first graders in our schools, in the Clark County school system now, than it was when I was a kid. We all looked alike, we all sounded alike, and we all came from middle income families. Most of our parents worked on the Strip or at the Nevada test site, one or the other. Now things have diversified dramatically, and it's only going to get better. I suspect, we're getting the A's. We were at the groundbreaking, and that's going to bring in a lot more business, a lot more tourists, and a lot more population. I believe in the next 5 years we're going to have an MBA team here, and that's going to be more tourists, more service jobs that are going to be available, more construction jobs, and with that comes doctors and lawyers and architects and developers and everything you need to build a city. And we are in the process of doing that right now. So I believe our future is better than rosy. It's exciting. I always think, and I think you know me well enough, my thoughts now are, what is this community going to be like when my grandchildren are adults?
Yeah.
What will keep them here? What do they need for their quality of life and to raise their own families, who I will never know? But I know they're coming. I've got 5 grandchildren now, and they're little. My oldest is 8,
Yeah.
and they go down to 12 weeks old. And
goodness.
so, just had another grandbaby. I want to make this town something that my kids wouldn't even dream of leaving, and my grandkids would not leave, because this is the place to be.
This is I know that 10 years out feels like a long time.
It's not.
It's not, because every time we talk to someone, like, well, we thought about that 20 years ago.
Right.
And so then I'm thinking to myself, so now it's a 40-year problem, not a 20-year problem.
Right.
So 10 years from now, like, where are you hoping Clark County is building and growing, and what kind of most excites you about being able to kind of help build it towards that?
Yeah. I'm hoping we have a more diversified economy, right? I think one of the things, for our era, right, I think COVID was like a shock. Like, we went through the recession, and that was challenging. Mm-hmm. But like during COVID, we're at the top of the unemployment scale, and it was just like hard, like seeing the strips shut down and trying to figure out like unemployment for people. That was really hard. So I hope in 10 years we have a more diversified economy, that I believe hospitality and tourism will always be our primary industry. But I think, especially like I said with sports, I think there are opportunities for other things. I think we're up there with the other secondary markets as far as opportunity for growth and development, as far as the things that are happening here. Part of it, I think, is was because of sports, right? I think when you have major cities and even cities that are smaller than ours from a population standpoint that have professional sports, and then you looked at us and we didn't have that. But I think once we got sports, people really started to pay attention, and we're starting, I think we're partly there in this phase where Vegas is no longer a tertiary market. Vegas is like a real place. A lot of people call this place home, and there's a lot of good deals and a lot of business that's happening here.
Where do you see the biggest opportunity for Nevada's future?
Well, that is a great question. I believe it is in workforce development, because nothing changes unless we create the pipeline of future employees and emerging talent to do the future work in our city. Nothing changes unless we impact our school district, impact the pathways to whatever it is, training, higher ed, military. We don't do a good job of, when students leave high school, them knowing what is next. And not only just them, but their families. And if we could improve that, I think that has a ripple effect that improves all other aspects of our community. Because I hear this all the time. I can't go to college because I have to watch my younger siblings. So I have a job at Panda Express and I have a job at Kohl's. I'm like, well, you are bilingual and you could go work at Barclays and make $25 an hour and have benefits and work remotely, and you could still watch Sister Brother and get your tuition paid for by school. But there's nobody in our valley that does that work of lining up those pathways for people.
I work at LVGA, and I've thought a lot about, our talent pipeline and what this looks like in the workforce sector. We have so many incredible organizations and nonprofits that focus on this, but we do know that there's gaps.
Yeah.
And I actually I think you're right. I think, I don't know how we do it, right? Because is it as simple as inviting them to a basketball game and then giving them some educational material, or is it something where we have to go into the schools? Is it parent teacher conference? Is it flyers? Is it,
I have a solution.
I would love to hear it.
Okay, so this is my dream. I need to win Powerball, and then I will fund this for the rest of existence. I believe that there should be, call it five bridge counselors in every high school. And they start working with high school students in the beginning of their junior year. And it's almost like having a caseload or a portfolio of students. So let's say they each have 100 students, and their job is to start meeting with them in their junior year and say, okay, what do you want to do? When when this is over, we got 2 years to figure this out. Mm-hmm. Do you want to go to the military? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to trade school? Do you want to, work in one of the hotels? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And then be able to give them experiences in those settings so that they solidify, yes, that's what they want to do. And then have a component where the parents come into that with them. And then the parents are also educated on what this next step is.
Would love to see more counselors. I mean, we saw it during the pandemic when they brought in counselors, and what that did for the students. Yes, obviously life was way different.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right. Having somebody who understands the all the options and laying them out for you. I can make the comparison to LVGA itself. We know all the options for businesses. They're not just coming here on their own. We're guiding them. Mm-hmm. So why aren't we doing that for our young people? I totally agree with you. So you've worked extensively in both the private and public sector. And, you've had many different hats. But over your tenure, where do you see the biggest gap in community needs? And what kind of bridges do you think we can build to help fill those gaps?
I've been in private sector most of my life, and so the nonprofit sector is new within about the last couple of years for me. So I say that the good thing is that I don't have nonprofit experience. The bad thing is I didn't have nonprofit experience, But I think that sometimes that lets you look at things with a little bit of a different lens. What I'm trying to accomplish at the
the Mayor's Fund for Las Vegas Life is to really demonstrate the power of public-private partnerships, because it has to be a combined effort. And when we look at the critical issues, and we know there's a lot of need. You know, when I came into the Mayor's Fund 2 years ago and did a listening tour, I had a list of 100 things that people were concerned about in this area, and they were all important. And we had to distill down where we thought we could make an impact. But the more we have the ability to get everybody in the room, combine our resources, and it's also identifying the problem, and then even more, what's the solution? And then everything in the middle of that, we're just filling in to try to figure out how do we get that end solution. And I think that it's challenging for nonprofits, particularly with some of the things that happen with federal funding. So I think it's even more important that there has to be synergy. I know Nevada Grant Lab does really good work with that. United Way is trying to be more synergistic with that. And we need to find a way to combine resources, stop some of the duplication we have in nonprofits, so that we're really able to be strong and combine that. When I'm looking at initiatives, I look at basically three different things, because our role at the Mayor's Fund is to provide a vehicle for private sector to be able to make a donation to us as a nonprofit. We then grant that to the city of Las Vegas, and we look for things where there are budget gaps. And the city almost always already has money invested, and we're filling that gap for them. So kind of my premise when I'm looking at different objectives is, number one, is another nonprofit doing it? Because let's not do that. Is it something we can make an impact on? So I'm not going to be able to cure homelessness, but I can make sure that those homeless animals that are at the Courtyard Homeless Resource Center, it's the only place in the region where a homeless person can walk in, put their pet in a kennel, and so the pet is safe, and then they will go access resources for themselves. So that's an example of something where we can make a difference in a small way. Does the city want to do it? Is this something they feel like they can execute well? And then lastly, is this something the donors engaged in? So does it fit their pillars, their community outreach? And so we combine all those things. We do that just on the city level. I think the opportunity to do this more broadly in the region is really there. You know, I've got somebody in my PR group that says, you know, it's like you run 10 nonprofits at once, Sally, because, you know, you need homelessness, I got that. Kids education, I got that. Public art, I've got that. So we have to find a way, though, to really be able to combine all those factors so that we have the ability to let everybody in the community start working on those problems in one mass.
Right. It sounds like you have to be everything to everyone all at once.
It's a lot of plate spinning sometimes, but it's very special because there's no other nonprofit in the region that's doing it this way. There are other Mayor's Fund concepts, whether they're called the Mayor's Fund or something else, throughout the country. There's one in London, and they all have a little different structure, and they have a different way of operating and that kind of a thing. But for what we do, we're basically a partnership architect. So our role is to connect those dots, put those puzzle pieces together, so that everybody ends up feeling like they're fulfilling something and making a difference in our community.
You've been a part of this university doing this for 33 years, and that's huge. Multiply that by how many commencements, how many first gens, how many families.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's really cool to just think about the ripple effect that higher ed can have. And we've seen it, right? We've seen, we hear it in the stories of our first gen students. We see it in the aftermath when they get amazing, jobs that help elevate their families. And it's a really special thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Really, really proud of it. And, one of the things that I think we do need to acknowledge is that higher education historically hasn't always been that. Higher education, if you look at the national data, its parents' income is a better predictor if someone gets a college degree than SAT scores. And it shouldn't be like that, right? We should make that opportunity available to everybody. And, I say to students coming in that college is the most amazing opportunity that exists, especially if you're at an R1 institution like UNLV that has hundreds of degree programs and labs that do, world renowned research all over the place, behind doors that often, few people open. so that they recognize that this is their chance to make the future that they want. It's not a given. We also sometimes, have students who think it's going to be like a conveyor belt and I'm going to just show up and after 4 years you're going to hand me a degree and everything's going to be great. It isn't that. But it is absolutely an opportunity. It's also a meritocracy. The other thing I say to students coming in is that you will have the record at graduation that you deserve, that you've earned. And so take advantage of these years that you have here to basically accelerate your future and open up doors that you might not even dream about now if you do that work and take advantage of it.
And I will say, even I graduated in 2008, and I very much felt the culture was just graduate, confer degrees, check the box. And I can tell you from spending so much time on campus now that is not the attitude of the university. It is, are these students ready for the workforce? Are they ready to be on their own? Are they ready to use that degree and do something with it and not just hang it on their wall? And as someone who graduated in 2008, arguably one of the worst times to graduate, it is a nice feeling knowing that there is an empathy behind, their time they spend on campus to make sure that it's not just, the checking the boxes, but it's actually, are they prepared? And I think the micro-credentials is a really good example of that.
Yeah, and so we are definitely, thanks for mentioning that, spending a lot of time really thinking about how we build workforce readiness into every program and be very intentional about that. We're also doing things like really trying to amplify the number of high-impact practices that students participate in. We know things like internships and undergraduate research and even study abroad. The students who participate in those things end up doing much better after they get out of college. And so, like I said earlier, and very much in line with what you said, we don't want to think about it, and we don't want the students to think about it as a conveyor belt where things happen automatically. We need to be intentional about making these opportunities available and building them into the curriculum from the first day on campus to the end of when they graduate, and keep getting that message out to students like, you are building your skill set and your resume for the future every day that you're here. So don't ask the question of what are you going to be ready to do when you graduate. Ask that question on day 2 and day 10 and day 100 and day 1,000, so that you're continuously thinking about how you're adding to your skill set, how you're adding to your toolbox, and what you have to offer to people, when you get out of college. Because essentially, I think about the main client of the university is not actually the student, it's the community, right? The state invests in us to offer a discounted, high-value degree so that the state can meet its workforce and other needs. And so the product that we produce is a student who goes out into the world able to add value to their employers and to our society generally.
It's funny, I graduated from Leadership Las Vegas last year.
Okay.
And I do feel like it is a kind of a fraternity here in town, because you go through 10 months where you really do learn the ins and outs of the city, and you learn how to, ask better questions, but more importantly, you ask where the gaps are, and then you can start to plan for that.
It's a wonderful program.
Oh, I'm so grateful for the Vegas Chamber for it. And I know Henderson Chamber has it as well, and I'm sure it's up north. I think these chambers wanting to be this conduit to help people, but I liken it to a fraternity in school, because you have some commonality with someone.
Yes.
And it goes back to the thing we talked about at the top of the hour, where, anonymity is such a prevailing way to communicate, and commonality, and people don't take the time to get to know them. And so we have to use these shortcuts, fraternities, maybe political parties, but organizations that we're involved in, volunteers we do. And I think that is a real way that people, in the hustle and bustle of 21st century living, I think that's a real way that people can find community and hopefully, be engaged with the world around us, because I think that's what makes Nevada so special, is people are willing to give back and give in and give their time, money, and talent and treasure. And it makes me really proud to be a part of a community that puts a focus on that.
Well, that organization is very helpful. And there are people that are out there that sometimes we talk about the negativity, and there's no question there's plenty of that out there, and we've talked in the course of our discussion about how polarized the state and the country is. But there are people out there that don't necessarily want to be involved in running for public office or in a campaign, but they found their niche. They've joined an organization which shares common interest, and they want to make an interest in the community. And every time I see that sort of thing happen, I always think of my dad and him talking about everybody has an obligation to pay what he called his civic rent. And there are so many people in our community that are willing to do so. And many of them have found that by becoming involved, I think I'd like to be a decision maker too. And that's kind of a step. And that's happened a lot, particularly with Leadership Las Vegas. It's a great program.
Let's talk a little bit about your background in Detroit. And I think that gave you a very unique perspective on community engagement. And I'm curious how those roots influence the way you're shaping communication and engagement today.
Truth be told, I don't think Detroit is where my community roots are. If you think about it, I have now spent more of my life out here and pretty much my whole adult life. The Midwest is really a sense of community. Like, we knew all of our neighbors, all the kids played out in the street together, we all grew up together. But I'd say my connection to the community, my love for it, and me having deep experience and roots in it is because I genuinely fell in love with the state. And it opened up every door imaginable. We are a big city, but at the end of the day, even 30 years later, I will say we are still so very small, and just how approachable everyone is, the access you have to everyone, what you can learn and be exposed to. In Detroit, I guess my biggest comparison is when I talked about why I moved here. In Detroit, you are a little fish in a big pond. And in southern Nevada and throughout Nevada, it's the complete opposite. And there was something really special about that. You didn't have to be 3-4 generations in to have a shot at being involved and getting to make a difference and getting to, have a seat at the table.
And I totally feel that, because I do feel like we have this immense community pride. And if you're somebody who wants to do good in this community and you're willing to put boots on the ground, I think we embrace you.
100%. And it goes back to, you have to put yourself out there. You can't just wait for someone to invite you to do something. Like, you got to have skin in the game and genuinely kind of explore that.
Yeah, I heard a quote. It was, the things you invest in are the things that you care about. Or maybe I'm mixing that up, but if you care about this community and then you actually invest in it, you don't want to just go to the events and take your picture at things. This community will 100% embrace you and
from
celebrate
all walks
you
of life,
and
from everywhere. It doesn't matter if you are at the 5-year mark, 10-year mark, you are a native. This place is very warm and welcoming.
And also, I like that, from all walks of life, because we have somebody from every demographic, every age, gender, socioeconomic, they all come here. And I think the global audience is also something that we have to celebrate, because we've got 56 million people that come through Harry Reid International every year.
And even if you're not in the number one industry being hospitality, and for many years I really wasn't on the tourism side or the gaming side, but you're still so connected to it indirectly, directly, and it is a force to be reckoned with. It is, I know everyone screams, diversify the economy, and certainly, we have a ways to go, but the pride of where we live being the number one most desired destination in the world. I mean, it's not just like we're down on a list. This place is special, and you can't replicate it anywhere, and you can take pieces of it and try to have those experiences. But at the end of the day, when you've watched all the changes and evolution of every time, everyone kind of, wants to try to take a piece of what makes us special. It's just right here.
the big thing right now is diversifying our economy. We've talked a lot about this.
And the big thing for 25 years.
Well, I mean, dot-com bubble,
Right.
the economic downturn, and then the pandemic, right? You have the bookends of 2 decades that you saw high unemployment rate. And I think it's no longer just this like sexy term that we can talk about. We actually have to do it. And I think that the higher ed institutions are a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, you know, we have 8 higher ed institutions, 7 academic. Where do you think their place is in the economic landscape of diversifying? But like, how do we? Yes, it is our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they are, you know, going in a good direction. But where do you think the community falls in with that?
Well, I think you're doing some great work on workforce. I have to say that. And I think that, you know, I think it's our responsibility to create those pathways, right? So that we can get our students into those varied fields. But, you know, as a community, we need to make education a priority in this state. Okay, so that's number one. So we need to really hold our elected officials accountable and make education a priority. And I think we need to be thinking outside of the box a little bit. You know, like there's some things that we can do in this economy, but it's a little bit of a risk. And a lot of times people don't want to take a risk. You know, right now, UNLV has all that land. We should maybe be doing something that is, you know, AI based, right? I mean, it requires a lot of energy, but, you know, maybe there's things that we can do out there that could really make a difference for Nevada. We should probably talk offline. But I just think that that's what we have to do. You need the leaders that aren't afraid to maybe take that calculated risk. And, you know, I think I think it's great we have Tesla up in Northern Nevada. And I know that, I think it was Sisolak that was governor at the time, got a lot of heat for, you know, providing that tax incentive package. But we have to do that kind of stuff. I'll go back to when I worked for Oscar. We had developers that were coming here. We were talking to people related, all these huge developers that were international, right? And we provided tax increment financing for them so that they could, whatever they had to pay in taxes, they were able to funnel that back into their project so that it would make it attractive for them to stay. And back then, we didn't have anything. I mean, the railroad tracks were, you know, needed to be remediated. I mean, there was nothing there. And so what we need to do is be creative and find ways to attract industry and also be competitive, because, you know, we've got places like Texas that are just really, you know, going all out to make sure that you, whatever you want, like just write your check and we'll give it to you. But that pays back in the end, you know, and we kind of need to get out of it. You know, I mean, we're a gaming and a mining state, you know, that's really what we are. And I think that we've got to do better for our kids and for our community. So I think we're on a good track. I think we're bringing in some new industry, and I think that's very exciting. But there's things that we can do, and you know, it takes some leaders that can really say, you know what, I'm willing to do this. What Oscar did. I mean, Oscar was like, downtown is the center of Las Vegas, and it's an apple, and the center of the apple's rotting, the whole city's going to rot. And I think he was right. So, you know, I mean, I've learned so much from him, being, you know, next to him for 6 years, you know, and he's the kind of leader that I'd like to be. You know, I'd like to be someone that isn't afraid to make a decision, isn't afraid to maybe take a little bit of a risk and say, you know what, this is what we need to do for our community. But we got to get our education system up to par.
Thank you for spending the time reliving some of my favorite conversations from 2025. Every guest this year reminded me of something important. Nevada isn't just a place, it's a community built by the people who show up, who care, and who believe in the future we're building together. I'm so grateful we're on this journey together, and we're just getting started. And I can't wait to bring you even more stories, more voices, and more heart in 2026. Until then, home means Nevada, always.